Alrighty then, what's going on guys? Lotus What Ifs here, back with another video. First of all, I'd like to apologize for two things. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not posting for mad long. I almost made it to a year. I'm really sorry for that. Um, Secondly, I apologize for having to make a new what if because I didn't have time to revise over my other what ifs and see where I left off. So I'll be doing that over the week, but I'll still be posting over the week. So I'll see where that takes me. Um, Anyways, this is a new what if. This is a what if deku. Um, so I'm gonna just put it as a regular what if deku was isekaied, cause you seem to like my isekai what ifs. So I'll just leave it at that for this one. Um, Anyways, so this one it's gonna be a little different. So Bakugo is still gonna hate Deku, of course. Like, yeah, I've made a lot. I realized that I've made a lot of what ifs where Bakugo was either chill with Deku or like it was a she or he was a she and stuff like that. So yeah, I do know about the events that's currently happening in the anime and the manga as well, and the other animes I'm reading. So don't worry about that. I have that under control. So yeah, so basically this is gonna start off when like the second day of school, like second day of UA, after they took the test and like Deku got like one of the lowest spots. So yeah, we're gonna start off at around there. So first of all, let's get down into Deku's background so that we can get things into an understood motion. So Deku, he was a relatively tired kid, like really exhausted all the time. So in this what if, Deku's house or the neighborhood he lives in, it's not relatively as good as it was in the anime. In this one, his neighborhood was a relatively impoverished neighborhood. Not really impoverished, but like where like people who struggle like to make ends meet live. So Deku, he had to work a lot with Inko as well. But in this one, Inko couldn't work as much because she was sick. She was diagnosed with cancer. So this one, she's not gonna die. I'm not going to kill her. Yeah, yeah, Mama Inko is gonna survive. She's not gonna die in this one. She's not a bad parent too. She wants everything for Deku. She tells Deku to stop working and like get rest, but Deku, he refuses to do that because he wants to get her treatment. And this one, he's gonna end up treating her. So don't worry about it. Well, I have that under control. All right. So in this one, there is no defeating the Demon King or anything like that. It's just trying to find a way to leave the world they're in, which Deku's gonna find out, but also the other classmates. But anyways, let's do this. So the ship. This is Deku. This is what Deku's gonna look like. The ship for this one is Momo. I know it doesn't look like Momo. I have a good reason for that, but don't worry, I'll explain that later. This is the world they're gonna be going to. It's much bigger than this. It's just that this is the best I could find for at least a front view. There's more than one world and stuff like that. So yeah. Anyways, let's get this started. So after the events of the test, the class, they're chilling and stuff like that, and they're talking about each other's powers and stuff like that. And then Aizawa comes into the class again as he was outside talking with All Might, and he says, "All right, class, we're gonna head you off to your next class." So they went on with the day as per normal, but then the next day comes, and before that, we're gonna skip to at home with Deku. Deku was with Inko, comforting her and stuff like that, because Inko seemed really worried. She's more worried in the anime, because in the anime, she was worried that Deku would get hurt because he had no quirk. Now she knows that Deku has a quirk. She knows that Deku has a quirk because, Deku, he understands that if his mom dies, his mom would have died not knowing that Deku could actually make something possible in this life. So he ended up telling Inko that he has a quirk. He didn't tell her exactly that it was one for all. He just told her that he has a quirk that gives him super strength to give her a little bit of comfort that he won't get hurt and he'll be safe. So Deku won't have to worry about that. So Inko is reassured that he'll be safe since he has a strength quirk and stuff like that. Inko, she continuously asks him about whether or not him and Bakugo are friends, but Deku, he always changes the subject to avoid it. But in this one, Deku is comforting Inko, feeding her and stuff like that. Basically doing the things that Inko would have done in the anime, like cooking food, giving Deku food, and like eating from and like feeding him when he couldn't use his arms. So yeah, so, seeing as how Deku was tired a lot, he couldn't really use All for One all the time. Because all for one, one for all, my bad. My apologies. One for all uses a lot of energy, which Deku does not have. So, in this one, that's how it works. So Deku goes to class the next day. He's led by Inko's side, making sure that everything was okay, continuously getting her water, making sure that she was fine. So the next day, they're in class, they're talking, stuff like that. So next thing you know, Aizawa ends up coming to the class, and he's talking about, okay, class, next week we're gonna have a field trip. This is basically the one to the damn, I forgot the name. I forgot. I forgot the name. But I'm not gonna go search it up. It's basically the facility and stuff like that for the training, where the first attack happened. But anyways, as he's talking about that, a magic portal opens up, or at least a black hole opens up under everybody in the class, and not the chairs and stuff like that get sucked in, but the students and Aizawa. So yeah, Aizawa's gonna be the only teacher that goes this time. So yeah. This one, All Might's not a douche. All Might's not a douche. I'm really getting tired of myself making All Might a douche. Like, he's really a nice person. Like, at some point in the manga, like, if you saw that scene in the manga where Deku just dipped off on All Might, it actually made you feel sad. So I'm not gonna do that. So, yeah, I won't be revealing much about the manga. So I'll only tell like small parts of it. They're not the important parts, but like small parts. All right, so Deku, as that happens, he was sleeping. So the moment that he got sucked in, he woke up immediately. So in this room, they meet a mysterious person. Now, this person has no face, no form. Well, they do have a form of their actual body, but their actual body is not in the space they're in. They're in a completely white room with this one thing that looks like an orb, a floating orb that is shining white. And the orb says to them, "Heroes of another dimension, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have accidentally died due to me trying to summon another group of people." And Bakugo, being the infuriated hothead he is, starts yelling like, we're dead, this and that. I still have to become number one and stuff like that. But Aizawa quickly shuts him up and says, "Bakugo, be quiet." Aizawa goes on to speak and says, "Alright, since that seems to be the case, what can you do about it, seeing as how you have summoned us?" And the man said, "Well, seeing as how I can't bring you back to your original world since you have already died and you do not have a vessel to be put inside of, I shall be making you reborn in another world." And everybody in the class said, "What? In another world?" And Deku says, he's panicking because he just left his mom all by herself, and he's worried. He's worried because he doesn't know whether her time is going to come soon or not. All he knows is that his mom, is terminally ill. So Deku is really concerned. Really, really concerned. He doesn't know whether he'll have enough time to actually make it back into his world. But Deku, he says, let's just live in the moment. Don't be scared, because, there's still a chance. And the orb sees, or the sentient being inside the orb, or that is projected through the orb, sees Deku's worry, and he says, "Fear not, young greenhead." That's what he's gonna call him. "Fear not, young greenhead. The timeline of this world that you shall be sent to will be a 10th time smaller than your world." So yeah. So basically, what this means is that when a year passes in his world, approximately 10 years would have passed in, well, the other world. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do it like this time. Deku's still gonna be OP, but like, anyway. So, Deku, seeing as how he heard that, he's no longer fearful, or as worried as he was before, because he knows the doctor told him that his mom has at least 10 years left. So Deku, he was working hard to get everything. And this happened around middle school with Deku. Like, around middle school with Deku where everything happened. So, yeah. Around 10 years. So, Deku, he says, "Alright, you still have a chance." So, the sentient being inside the orb says, "Seeing as how you have all died and I shall be sending you to a world, this world has magic and not the supposed concept of quirks that your world runs by, and everybody's surprised. They're like, and like most of them are like, really, a magic world and stuff like that. And yeah, Minetta's like, oh, magical girls and stuff like that. So yeah, you see how it is. Him and Denki, magical girls and stuff like that. So they're mostly talking about like, oh, how wonderful it's gonna be to be in a magical world. Bakugo is excited about being able to use fire magic, destruction magic, or stuff like that. And yes, I'm making destruction magic a magic, so is creation magic and stuff like that, because this world that, well, Deku and friends are going to, are built on concepts. So like there are layers to the concepts as well, like concept of fire and stuff like that, but there's also like layers to those concepts. For basically, like the concept of fire, the basic level of the concept of fire, you like using fire from another place. You need another source of fire to fuel your fire, kind of like Natsu, how he can't eat his own flames, but if he eats other flames that are created, he can gain his flames back. So it's basically like that for the first layer. But there are many layers, even to infinite layers. And infinite layers has many powers, but let's get to like the 10th layer. 10th layer is like creating your own fire and stuff like that. Shooting it around, you can make, and there's the 100th layer where you can make things like stars, like fireballs as hot as stars and stuff. So you can see that the people in this world are pretty goated. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty goated. They're pretty goated. So since there's no demon king and stuff like that, there's still gonna be trials, tribulations, troubles, and stuff like that. But the ultimate goal of the class right now, or at least Deku, is to get home. Aizawa's ultimate goal is to protect the students, because he doesn't know whether they're gonna be able to go back home. So, seeing as how the god, or the sentient being, gave them understanding of the world, how it's built on layers, concepts, and stuff like that, as I was like, so concept of nullification of magic must be existent, and it is existent. So I'm gonna say this now, that those layers of concepts and concept itself will be put back into, when they go back, it will be carried onto their world. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. So Deku, seeing this, it says, okay, and the god said, I will grant you one wish. He grants each people one wish. Kirishima and stuff like that. Kirishima wished for a high growth rate and stuff like that. So like most of the class mostly wished to be like a genius and stuff like that. So yeah. But like there's some exceptions that wish for more. Bakugo wished for power. Now he didn't say to what extent, he just said power. So God believed that it was just limitless power. But with this limitless power, Bakugo has to get from layer to layer to layer. So it's not that he doesn't have the power, it's more of the power being sealed. And he'll come to find out over time that he can get stronger. So then Aizawa wished for omniscience. Yes, omniscience. Yeah. Omniscience. He wished to be omniscient. So there's layers to this world, like I said before. So there's layers to omniscience. So for Aizawa, it's kind of like leveling up when it comes to the knowledge, like reading books, stuff like that. Now, with reading books, he gains experience, getting smarter and smarter and smarter. He can as he puts the things that he learned from the books into action, he can gain experience from that too. So that's kind of how it's gonna work. Momo, she asked for basic understanding of all material in the world. Just basic understanding. She'll advance it herself. So the god didn't put any restrictions on that, since it was mostly the basics. So he gave that to her. And then there is, well, Mineta, who asked to get taller. Denki, who asked for, well, resistance to his electricity. So yeah. So their quirks are mostly going to be like the foundation for their magics and stuff like that. So, and the concepts. So now it's Deku's turn. Everybody's looking at Deku, and Deku, he's about to say something until he stops himself, and he gets a flashback of his life and seeing how he's in a terrible state right now and how he doesn't even get sleep and stuff. And Deku says, easy. And the god said, "Excuse me?" And Deku says, "I want the easiest life possible." When Deku made this wish, the god was compuzzled when he said easiest. Because the moment Deku said easiest, he referred to having bugs and bugs and bugs and bugs. So basically, like a cheat in this whole world. And the moment he said easiest life in this world, one thing came into existence. He was given the easiest life, but with that came one more ability or abilities. And it sprouted a power within Deku. And that power is called conceptual defiance. So the moment Deku made that wish, the god was not only curious, but frightened. Because Deku, he defied the concept of that transcendent being. So if Deku wanted to, he could just say, "Be gone, I do not believe in you," and that transcendent being would cease to exist. So, seeing as how Deku has conceptual defiance, he defies every concept, including the concept of quirks. So, seeing as that happened, Deku said, "That is my wish." Completely forget not knowing that he just created, not knowing that he has that power. So the god said, "Alright, now it's time for you to be reincarnated. You will not be reincarnated looking the same, you will be inside of new bodies." And this is where Momo's appearance comes into place. In this world, Momo is going to be a witch. There are different species inside of this world. They're all okay with each other. They coexist perfectly fine. Sure, there are problems sometimes, but they can coexist. So Momo's a witch. Deku, he's not a human. He's mostly Deku in this one. He's mostly like an anomaly. He's a combination of almost everything. But Deku chose to stay a human. Now, Deku's appearance comes from, well, those birds, or at least his pale skin. The birds you see around him, his skin is so pale because, well, he just wants his skin to be pale. And because he liked the color of, well, the white on the birds. That's why his skin is pale. So, in this one, Momo is still born in a wealthy or rich family and stuff like that. Well known for making magic potions, elixirs, and stuff like that. Basically, like witchcraft. So, Deku, he's still a normal human, but he's not poor in this one. He's not impoverished. He's mostly middle class. Not like Viscount and stuff like that, nor Duke, but he's a noble. Now, Deku, seeing as he is a noble born in this world, Deku has two siblings. In this one, Deku has two siblings, and he's the oldest. Now, Deku, seeing as how he was born tired. So immediately after he was born, he didn't even cry. He fell immediately to sleep. Now, the moment Deku went to sleep, his cheat came into play, and all of his magic circuits opened. And his family and even the world itself started noticing that high concentrations of mana were flowing into one direction, and his family, being the closest to him, noticed that they were going to him. Seeing as how this world is built on infinites of concepts, the concept of infinite mana is still relevant. So this world is filled with infinite mana, and there is no limit to it, so I will not be nerfing this world just to make Deku stronger. Okay? Alright, good. So, seeing as how that happened, not only was it a dense concentration of mana, but natural energy. So, seeing as how his family was the closest to him, they see this and they're concerned because it was not only going in large amounts, but at a large rate. So, Deku was mostly frightened, and he was like, well, no, not Deku, but his family were mostly frightened. And they were frightened, but seeing as how Deku didn't explode after 10 seconds, because that's what happens if you take in a lot of mana. For most people in this world, if you take in a lot of mana that is too much for your capacity, you will explode. So seeing how Deku did not explode shows the family that Deku is relatively born as a strong child, or at least a child prodigy. So seeing as how Deku is sleeping, he's getting memories and memories and memories. So basically, Deku is basically connected with this world of infinite concepts. So things like the concept of causality, like life, death, and stuff like that, they don't affect him. And Deku chose an easier life. So Deku, the concept of time does not work around him. So yeah. So basically, he's kind of like the god of my religion. I'm Christianity. He's basically kind of like God. How nothing can affect God. So that's basically how Deku works, but he's not like my god. So anyways, yeah, everything, he's connected to the world and everything. Basically that whole universe, he's connected to it. So he's gaining like knowledge and knowledge and knowledge and knowledge. While Aizawa would struggle with his omniscient, Deku is nigh omniscient, which makes it so that he's learning the knowledge of this world and other worlds inside of that universe at a high rate. Not only that, he figures out that this world has, well, multiple universes. Well, not figures out, he created the concept of that. Because Deku, he said, seeing as how this universe exists, then maybe there are more than one universe, thus creating the multiversal theory. Yeah, see? I told you, he was broken. He created the multiversal theory just like that. So he's now exploring those multiverses, and Deku's like, there has to be something more than multiverse. And there comes into existence something more than the universe. Now, after that happens, well, after the multiversal theory happens, that transcendent being now realizes he is not at the top anymore, or at least one of the many people that are at the top. He now notices that he is probably one of the insignificant beings inside of that world now. Since Deku has made it so now there are infinite layers to this world, and these layers are built on dimensions. Since this world is, well, in total, it's multiple omniverses. I think I explained what the omniverse was. First was the, well, galaxy, no, planet, then solar system, then galaxy, then universe, then multiverse, then metaverse. I think you get where this is going. This is built up on many of those things. So yeah. And then there's the omniverse, and then there's the beyond. The beyond is a restriction boundary for the omniverse so that the omniverse does not break apart. All right? That's why the beyond exists. It exists as a plane space of infinity so that the universe does not break apart. No, that omniverse does not break apart and just splatters everywhere, creating separate dimensions on the side or under it. For there are other worlds next to it, so it does not want the omniverse splattering and going to the next dimension, putting the dimension next to it into a critical condition. So seeing as how that dimension is built on many dimensions, infinites of dimensions, which the one on top is vastly stronger than the other by infinites of times, that's how that world came to be. So Deku now realizes he has a lot to explore, and Deku is over here taking mana or magical energy from all of those dimensions, and his family starts to notice a drastic change. Cause when his father used to at least cultivate or take in mana, it was relatively slow since he was already strong. He was, well, in human standards, he was a 10-star magician. 10-star magicians are basically like 10 layers of magical strength. Like I said again, each layer is vastly stronger than each other. So a 1-star compared to a 10-star is basically like not even comparing night and day. It's like comparing humans to the universe. So it's vastly stronger. Hold on. Yeah, it's vastly stronger. I had to calculate something. So basically, like layer 1, it's just regular, like human level of, well, magic usage and stuff like that. Layer 2 is 100 times, and each time it gets like 100 and 100 more. So you get how strong the 10 stars are. You can do it on a calculator if you want. So just do 1 times 100 times 100, at least like just do like 100 times 100. How do I say this? 100 to the 10th power. Yeah, like that. 100 to the 10th power. That's easier, right? Yeah, that's easier to do. All right, good. So that's basically how strong they are. Yeah, I can see that number. I can imagine that number. But anyways, that's how strong 10-star magicians are, since that world now is more reinforced and stronger. So basically, the natural materials inside of that world are stronger. So they basically just messed up Momo's whole wish for the basic understanding of the world. So now Momo is quite honestly frightened because she doesn't know how these layers to this world started to exist. She just knows that there's layers. She doesn't know how much layers there are just layers. Because before, she only knew that there was just one layer to this world, and it was just a big universe. So seeing as how this happened, Momo is now concerned on who was the one that made a wish for this world to be bigger, or how did this occur. She thought that it was the transcendent being, but no, she has yet to find out that it's going to be Deku. Anyways, now, as Deku's growing up and stuff like that, Deku has basic understanding of magic and stuff like that around the world, and Deku says, you know what, I'm going to take a painting, as seen in the picture right here. Paintings that Deku creates come to life, but Deku made sure that they do not get too out of hand, because Deku understands that he is limitless. Literally, he's limitless. So Deku understands that his power is far beyond that of anyone inside of that universe. And Deku, he understands this and he says, I'm gonna limit myself. So he limits himself to a level where he can protect himself from those many layers of dimensions, but also not hurting the people of the world he decided to reside in, which is the first and original world. So it's kind of like the dimensional theory, how there are 10, possibly 11 dimensions, and everything derives from the 11th dimension, but in reverse. It's the first dimension that everything derives from in this one. So yeah, that's kind of how this one is working out. Now, Deku, with his vast understanding, vast power and stuff like that, vast skills and stuff, Deku still decides to live a lazy life. Deku mostly spends his days helping his brothers out, caring for them and stuff like that, since Deku, he grows at a large pace. Deku, who is currently at least 10 years old, and his younger brothers who have been born, they're twins, by the way, he cherished them a lot, and they cherish him a lot too, because Deku had never neglected his brothers, which would make them hate him. So he actually stayed by their side all the time. Whenever their parents would go out, or the father would have to go out for battles and stuff like that, and the mother would have to go to do work. The mother is also a magician. She is also a 10-star magician. Seeing as how 10-star magicians created Beast, everybody was like, okay, they're the ghosts. They are like that. So Deku, seeing as how now he fully understands his power, he says, I can legitimately go back to my world anytime I want. But Deku says, you know what? I'll wait until I meet everyone in my class, even though he knows exactly where each and every one of them are. Each and every one of them. Oh, by the way, Bakugo is a part of the Beastman race. He is a dragon. Yeah, he's a part of the Dragonkin race. So yeah, and Sue is also a Dragonkin race and stuff like that. Kirishima, he's human, but he uses rock magic and stuff like that. Everybody with their powers are human. Mineta's hair does not have the balls as they did before. His hair is just, well, long brown hair, shoulder length at least. So, yeah. And he practices poison magic, by the way. So, yeah, that's kind of how that works. Um, yeah, and the class is going to create their own unique magics and stuff like that. Deku had already created his own unique magic of defiance, because it really derives from his wish, so he could just make any magic that he wants. So Deku, he already knows the magic that everyone in his classmate has or will have, because he knows everything that happened inside of the world from the past to now and to the future. And he knows everything that's going to happen inside of each and every dimension, even if it's infinite. So Deku, at the beginning, he got headaches. And Deku said a few words and said, I hate this headache. And the headache ceased to exist and it doesn't hurt him anymore. And he said, I wish for the... And Deku said, I wish for the knowledge that I gain to be categorized. And then it gets categorized with dimension. Like, it's legitimately an infinite folder with like dimension 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and stuff like that. And Deku, he doesn't have to pull out the files are just connected to the brain. It's just that they had to be organized in specific places for, well, Deku to know which is for which, because Deku's not trying to mix up dimensional 10 with dimensional 1 and be like, oh wow, I just exploded dimensional 1 because I used enough force to create dimensional like 10 and stuff inside of it on dimensional 1. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. So Deku, seeing as how this is happening, Deku says, you know what, I'll focus on my brothers, I'll wait until I meet my classmates and stuff like that. So they're about like 12 now, which is the minimum requirement for them to go into the Magic Academy. So seeing as how that happens, his parents go to Deku and says, son, we know that you're relatively tired all the time and you're really strong, but we want to ask, do you want to go to the Magic Academy? Now, Deku, seeing as how he doesn't want to leave his brothers, but he also wants to meet his classmates again, not friends, but classmates, he says, sure, let me go. And his parents, surprised by his answer and his nonchalantness about the answer, and says, okay, we'll enroll you. So we skip to 2 months later. It's the first day, or the enrollment. So anyways, Deku and everybody in the class from far and near go to the Magic Academy and stuff like that. Sue will be learning how to transform and stuff like that. She is a part of the Beastkin race, but she is mostly a Beastkin that specializes in transformation magic. Transformation magic can use the powers of the transformation, so do not worry about that. I have this under control. So yeah, so Deku, seeing as how this exists, Momo is currently still advancing the natural materials or the nature of the world to her understanding. When I said materials, I did not mean like things like iron and stuff like that. No, I meant like the basic knowledge of that world in general and how to use it. So yeah. So seeing as how they go, first day of school and stuff like that, Bakugo, he's extremely good at, well, at fire magic, explosion magic, and it's mostly because he's a dragon. He has a faster rate of improvement, so is Kirishima, since he asked for that. So first day of school, they passed the test. It was different. I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched Wise Man's Grandchild, but I'll give you a sum up. It's basically like regular, it's kind of like those tests for entrance exams where you have to shoot a dummy and stuff like that and see how much damage you do, calculate your magical power and stuff like that. Deku, he got the highest mark, making him first place. Bakugo, who is really infuriated, is mad at this. So at some point, Deku made it so that when he or his classmates meet him, they will know who each and every one of them are to one another. So that's kind of how it worked. So Deku, seeing that angry yelling and stuff like that, he knows, oh, it's Bakugo. Off the bat, knows it's Bakugo. And he doesn't really care, and Bakugo, charging at Deku and says, oh, hey, Deku, how did you get first place and stuff like that? You must have cheated and stuff like that. But Deku, he doesn't have a problem with it and just ignores it. And Bakugo's like, oh yeah, you're gonna ignore me? Alright, I'll wait for you. And that's kind of how it went. So, Aizawa still enrolls as a teacher in the Magic Academy. Again, after becoming a Magic Knight and becoming Not 10 stars, but 100 stars. Yes, Aizawa is broken. So, seeing as how this happened, Bakugo, he's in the same class, like everybody in the same class again for homeroom and stuff like that. And Aizawa, he can speak normally to them because he knows who they are. They know who he is, and they're chill with that. So, they talk about like basic magic theory and stuff like that for the students that don't know like things like that. So like students like Mina, Mineta, and stuff like that, like everybody else in the class, like Ojo and stuff like that, like everybody else. But like for Momo, Bakugo, Aizawa, Deku, and Kirishima, and Sue, they know this stuff. Because for Sue, she needs the basic knowledge of magic so that she can actually know how much magic to use for certain transformations. She can't transform into a dragon. Well, she can, but not the strongest or relatively strong dragons. So, seeing as how this happens, Deku, he says, alright, I understand this. I'll just go to sleep. So, they go on to every class learning about like mechanics, stuff like that, like basic magic theory, swordsmanship mechanics, and stuff. So the class, they basically spend at least 10 years 10 years inside of this world. They spend 10 years. Deku, he's fully fledged, like really strong. He's really strong. Deku has traveled from dimension to dimension to the point where he even transcended the, well, infinite dimensions, creating more than the infinite dimensions, completely adding on to the dimensions, breaking the dimensions, creating dimensions within the dimensions, and making them bigger. So that all happened in the span of 10 years. Now, the class have also went on, well, some adventures with Deku. Bakugo grudgingly went because Kirishima dragged him along. So, yeah, Momo, over the time, she studied with Deku because Momo, she didn't have as vast as understanding as Deku, and Aizawa as well studied with Deku. They usually went to his house and stuff like that. So basically, Deku's house was really big because he made it big. His parents noticed at a young age that Deku liked playing around with space. So they ended up giving him a room separate to himself, and Deku ended up making that room spacious as the dimensions inside of that world. So that world is basically a dimension, like a dimensional hub. It's basically a dimensional hub built with different dimensions from shows that he watched, and well, not really shows, but like a TV dimension to watch shows and stuff like that. And his family know about it and stuff like that, but they never tell the world about how strong Deku is. So they know about the dimensional gates and stuff like that because Deku has made gates to the dimensions, not for himself, but for other people. So people like his family and like his classmates, because if they were to go in the manner in which he does, because Deku, he tears through legit space to do that. And like I said, each dimension is infinites of times stronger than the one below it. So if they were to go through that space, not only would they be crushed by the space, but they would end up being ripped apart and die. So it's basically like a black hole, but on an infinite scale. So the class, strong. Deku, he's just transcended the hierarchy. He just transcends the hierarchy, so there's no point in scaling him. And then, like the class, Momo and stuff like that, they're on the level of people in the 50th dimension. All right, the 50th. I don't know whether that's right or not. Dimension 50. Yes, that's better now, because that's the best that I can say. So the 50th dimension. Yeah, I'm terrible with saying the word 50th and stuff like that. So so seeing in the 50th dimension, oh my god, I keep saying that. Dimension 50 is practically infinite as well as every other dimension, so it's really strong. So it's safe to say that their strength is infinites of strength as to that dimension, because now they transcend that dimension and they're able to go to the next dimension. So they're traveling in the dimension, and Deku, Aizawa later on figured out that Deku transcends everything in that world, so that means he can get them back to his world. And Aizawa is going to ask him that, and he ends up asking. And he says, when do you plan on bringing us back? And Aizawa says, and Deku says to him, I don't need to. And Aizawa questions him and says, what do you mean? This world, we only have 10 years in a year. And Deku goes on to say, not particularly. I changed that rule. And Aizawa says, what do you mean? And Deku goes on to say, for a year to pass by in our universe, a whole eternity in each and every one of these dimensions have to pass by. And Aizawa's eyes widen in shock. And then he asks Deku, how long have we been in this world? And Deku says, 5 million years. Or at least you have. And Aizawa, who has decided to stay on the fifth dimension, says, 5 million for me? What about the class? And Deku says, as I said, everything in each layer of the dimensions move different from each dimension. The class who on the 51st dimension have been inside of this world for more than 900 quadrillion years. And Aizawa's eyes are widened in shock, and he says, how long have you been in this world? And Deku says, I'm not in this world. And Aizawa questions him again and says, what do you mean? And Deku goes on to reveal, I transcended this world from birth. I'm the reason this world has many layers. I do not belong in this world. My mere existence in my actual body in this world could possibly crash not only the hierarchy but the infinite dimensions, merging them into one, making them much bigger but also more dangerous than it should be. And Aizawa starts to get a basic understanding of this and says, then where are you? And Deku says, home. Not signifying where home is, but saying that he is a place where he considers a comforting place. Deku, who is outside of all the layers, is not in the boundless but transcends the boundless. He exists in home, where he has kept his family from that in that world there. And the family fully understand that, and they're fine with that. His brothers, who are old, really old, and Aizawa says, but we should have died. And Deku says, yes, everybody in the class, everybody in each layer of those worlds should have. But then Deku says, seeing as how those worlds are endless though, I can't allow you guys to die. And Aizawa says, what do you mean? Deku says, this world that is infinite is made for exploration. So, everyone's desire in this world should be to explore it. So he has made it so that everybody in that world is immortal. Not partially immortal that they can still die. No, immortal as in they can die. They'll feel pain and stuff like that. They can get injured, but they will heal after some time, depending on how big the damage is. So Aizawa understands this and says, when can you bring us home? And Deku says, He looks up, not at anything but at Bakugo, and he says, Bakugo, when Bakugo reaches the 5 octillionth layer. And Aizawa says, how long will that take? And Deku says, for the world that you're in, 5 octillion years. And Aizawa says, where would the class be by that time? Deku says, oh, the class? They'd be on the same level as Bakugo. And Aizawa's wondering why. And Deku goes on to say, the class have Momo, so they'll be fine, because they have somebody with knowledge in their team. And then, so they'll be on the same level as Bakugo. They have powerhouses and stuff like that. And they have high-level magics. So, seeing as how that happened, so basically that world is kind of like a ginormous tower. Like a ginormous tower, but it's more of dimensions, and you can actually see the outside and stuff like that. So, seeing as how that happens, Deku says, I'll be going into seclusion for the next 5 octillion years. So, the 5 octillion years pass by for Aizawa, and Aizawa says it should be time. And just as he says that, Deku appears right in front of him and says, it's time. And Aizawa says, yeah, it is. And, I need to do something real quick. Alright, I'm done. And as that happens, Deku snaps his fingers, and a bright flash happens in front of Aizawa and to everybody in the class. And they appear here. Now, everybody's transported, and Bakugo starts screaming, and he was about to attempt to break one of the pillars. And Deku yells out from afar, Katsuki Bakugo, do not break a single pillar in my palace. And Bakugo says, what? And they look and they see Deku. And Bakugo says, huh? Why shouldn't I break one? And Deku says, each and every pillar of this palace is equivalent to 1 dimension of the world we were just in. And everybody is shocked and frightened by this. And Bakugo soon realizes, if he broke one of those pillars or even damaged it, it'd be equivalent to him damaging a whole dimension. Not the dimension that all those other dimensions are, but at least one of those dimensions, and breaking it. And Bakugo says, fine, I won't. So why are we here, nerd? Bakugo over the years has gotten chillaxed. So he says, why are we here? And Deku says, it's time. And Momo, seeing as how this happened, she realized that, is it time for us to go? Now, Momo says, is it time for us to leave? And Deku says, yes. And everybody says, leave? What do you mean leave? And Deku says, it's time to go back home. And Deku says, but what if we go back home? What? How much years would have passed? What about our families? And Deku says, don't worry. Time has nothing happened in our world. It is still the time that we had left. And they ask, what do you mean? And Deku tells them to sit down. And he goes on to give them a whole class lecture of what happened in this world, or at least what he did to the world from the fact that when he was born. Alright, my bad. I paused so suddenly. My bad, something came up. Anyways, so after explaining all of this, class were not only fascinated but intrigued. And Deku says, now it's time for us to go back. And Bakugo said, but I haven't reached the top. And Deku says, you've reached further than most people. And that reassures Bakugo that he's one of the strongest, if not the strongest in the class. And Bakugo says, but what happens now? What about our strengths? Can't we destroy the world? And Deku says, right about that. He says to them, the concept of layers in this world and how things work in this world shall be transferred to the other, but the other world shall stay the same with the same people, and our world shall stay the same with the same people. So basically what he's saying is the concept that happened in this world, the things that he did in this world will happen to the other world, and he will bring his family along, and if they want to bring their family along, they shall do so. So, seeing as how this happened, all of them decided to bring their families because their families love them and cherish them. So, seeing as how that happened, Deku snapped his fingers, and approximately over 100 people, like around 100, 200 people, because like everybody in the class had around siblings. Actually, let me go make a calculation with this one. So, approximately 620 people were inside of that room. Also, the numbers were drastically large, mostly because of um, Bakugo's family, which is the dragons that live for a long time. So there are a lot of people in the life, in like the lineage, and Momo. So yeah, they took approximately 80%, like approximately 80% of that whole lineage. And Deku says, well, damn, that's a lot of family members. And Deku says, all right, seeing as how things are now, I should explain to the parents, children, and stuff like that. So Deku explained everything to them, and everybody understood, and they said, okay, going to the people in their family and saying, let's go. So Deku snaps his fingers, and you hear a loud snap inside of that whole place. Deku's family was already there, they already knew the plan, and Deku said, alright. So Deku, they go back to their universe, and Deku's palace, I really need to find a way to show you what the palace looks like from the outside, shouldn't I? Yeah, I should. So yeah, this is what Deku's castle looks, at least the exterior. Y'all have seen the interior. This is not just his castle, but his playground, and also this place is filled with infinite space. So, seeing as how that is, Deku, thinking that it would be lonely for his family, but also himself, he had created extraterrestrial life that also not defy the boundaries, but they defy the layers. So they're stronger than every layer that he has ever created and will create. They're not as strong as Deku because they cannot defy the concept of Deku's existence. So they're below him. They're at least third layer when it comes to strength. The second is his family, of course, and the first is him, and it can only be him. There's nothing above him. So, seeing as how that happened, Deku offered the family to stay down in their world, the original world, with their families and stuff like that. So Deku, he had teleported their original families and stuff like that, except for Inko, because he wants to talk to Inko personally and show her all of the things that he had created. So he teleported them to rooms, explained the situation, and they were all fine with it. Why? Because, well, seeing as how their children were like really, really strong, like drastically stronger than everything in their original world, they can, well, do anything. So Momo decided that she's going to design a house for like creating the things and stuff like that. And she did. She created like a ginormous house, like a really big house for them in that world. So basically for each and every family, including her original family. And Deku tampered with the space inside of it so that there are infinite rooms for each family to stay in and manners and stuff like that. So basically, the class had now become a big family. Aizawa included had a family of his own. So that's kind of how it worked. So yeah. So since that happened, Deku decides that he's gonna go talk to Inko personally. So he teleports Inko into the world. Inko was sleeping, but he teleported her into a small room. A small, simple room, not a white room, but regular room and stuff like that. Inko wakes up sooner or later, 2 hours later, and she sees somebody with, well, long white and blue hair. And she says, "Who are you?" And Deku says, "It's me, Mom, Izuku." And Inko said, "Izuku? How did you get how do you look so different?" And Deku, he goes on to explain everything that happened in the other world shortly. And Inko was bawling out, saying, "Oh, my poor baby, you must have been sad that you died." And Deku said, "No, I was mostly worried about you and your illness." And Inko was glad that he cared about her so much. My bad. And yeah, so Deku says, "Mom, you've always taken care of me even when you're sick. It's time I repay you back." Deku proceeds to have a green light glow around Inko, and Inko realizes that she's being healed. She no longer feels pain like she was feeling before. She's calmer now. She's more soothed, and she says, "Izuku, what did you?" And Izuku says, "You're no longer sick, and you'll never get sick again." And Inko, she starts crying and says, "Thank you, Izuku. Thank you, 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 thank you." And she continuously does that. And Deku hugs her and stuff like that while she cries. And he cries as well. So Deku explains this, and he says she's going to teach her to meet the new family. So they meet the new family and stuff like that. Inko was also restored. She never turned into the short version of herself. She was always her old self and stuff like that. And yeah, that's kind of the case. And basically, everybody met in a big living room. A big living room. The big living room is basically, well, not this, but something close to it. It's really as big as that and stuff like that. And everybody met inside of the living room and stuff like that. They talked. And Bakugo's mom, Mitsuki, says, "Inko, you look really younger," and stuff like that. And Bakugo says, "Ah, right, we forgot to do that." And the class look at each other, and Momo says, "That's correct, we did." As everybody in the class proceeds to snap their fingers, as everybody in their families proceed to look younger, at least as young as they were when they were in their 20s. And everybody's wondering what happened, and Deku proceeded to say, "Well, your kids learned a lot in the other world, so they also learned how to reverse the aging process, so basically time, and made you younger to what you look like in your 20s and your youth." And everybody is shocked, and they're thankful to their kids and stuff like that. And Deku proceeded to say, "You're also immortal now." And they said, what can we do in this small world?" And Deku explains to them what he did and how he tampered with their original world and stuff like that, and how badly it is. And Deku says, "Yeah, as that happens," Deku says, "You know what? Why don't I make it bigger?" As the class are wondering, make what bigger? Since they know how Deku can be, especially with his strength. And Deku says, "The dimensional planes." And they said, "What?" And because they never knew there was something stronger, bigger than a dimension. Actually, hold on, I have to do something. I have to check something. My bad. Alright, and I'm back. And everybody says, "Bigger than a dimension? There's no such thing." And Deku says, "There is now." Since, like I said, anything Deku believes comes into reality. So Deku, what he designed was a flat plane with multiple copies of each and every dimensional plane, or the overall dimensional plane of the original My Hero Academia, well, dimensions, those infinites of dimensions. They're now packed into a small box and placed in one place, and it's multiplied infinitely, creating other boxes that get bigger and bigger, that are continuously made of those layers. So now it's infinite times how much now? I don't even want to calculate. That's too much work. I'll tell you about it like the next video. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And that's basically the start of it all, where everybody gets back, everybody gets familiarized, gets familiar with each and every one another, and Deku confirms to the class that they can go back into continuing and exploring the dimensions. And Bakugo goes back to the 5 octillionth dimension, hoping to get higher and higher with everybody else in the class, while the parents, they explore the dimensions too, but only for resources to make food, or at least the mothers the fathers, they go with the kids to explore, to get stronger, to protect their family. And yeah, that's it for part 1 of What If Deku was isekaied. That took a lot of time to make and think about. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed, and goodbye.